one who desires liberation, Udaradihi, with broader intelligence, Divrena, with great force, Bhakti Yogena, by devotional service to the Lord, Yajata, should worship, Purusham, the Lord, Param, the Supreme Whole. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. Purport: the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is described in the Bhagavad Gita as Purushottama, or the Supreme Personality. It is He who can award liberation to the impersonalists by absorbing such aspirants in the Brahmajyoti, the bodily rays of the Lord. The Brahmajyoti is not separate from the Lord, since the glowing sun ray is not independent of the sun disk. Therefore, one who desires to merge into the supreme impersonal Brahmajyoti must also worship the Lord by Bhakti Yoga, as recommended here in Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti Yoga is especially stressed here as the means of all perfection. In the previous chapters, it has been stated that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of both Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And in the same way, in this chapter, it is emphatically declared that Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal of different varieties of worship of the different demigods. Bhakti Yoga, thus being the supreme means of self-realization, is recommended here. Everyone must therefore seriously take up the methods of Bhakti Yoga, even though one aspires for material enjoyment or liberation from material bondage. Akama is one who has no material desire. A living being naturally, being the part and parcel of the Supreme Whole, Purusham Purnam, has his natural function to serve the Supreme Being, just as parts and parcels of the body or the limbs of the body are naturally meant to serve the complete body. Desireless means, therefore, not to be inert like stone, but to be conscious of one's actual position and thus desire satisfaction only from the Supreme Lord. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained in this desirelessness as Bhajaniya Paramam Purusha Sukha Matra Swa Sukhatvam in his Sandarbha. This means that one should feel happy only by experiencing the happiness of the Supreme Lord. This intuition of the living being is sometimes manifested even during the conditioned stage of a living being in the material world. And such intuition is expressed in the matter of altruism, philanthropy, socialism, communism, etc., by the undeveloped minds of less intelligent persons. In the mundane field, such an outlook of doing good to others in the form of society, community, family, country, or humanity is a partial manifestation of the same original feeling in which a pure living entity feels happiness by the happiness of the Supreme Lord. Such superb feelings were exhibited by the damsels of Rajabhumi for the happiness of the Lord. The gopis loved the Lord without any return, and this is the perfect exhibition of the Kama spirit. Kama spirit, or the desire for one's own satisfaction, is fully exhibited in the material world, whereas the spirit of Akama is fully exhibited in the spiritual world. Thoughts of becoming one with the Lord or being merged in the Brahmajyoti can also be exhibitions of Kama, spirit, if they are desires for one's own satisfaction to be freed from the material miseries. A pure devotee does not want liberation so that he may be relieved from the miseries of life. Even without so-called liberation, a pure devotee is aspirant for the satisfaction of the Lord. Influenced by the Kama spirit, Arjuna declined to fight in the Kurukshetra battlefield because he wanted to save his relatives for his own satisfaction. But being a pure devotee, he agreed to fight on the instruction of the Lord because he came to his senses and realized that satisfaction of the Lord at the cost of his own satisfaction was his prime duty. Thus he became Akama. That is the perfect stage of a perfect living being. Udaradihi means one who has a broader outlook. People with desires for material enjoyment worship small demigods, and such intelligence is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita 7:20 as Kritagyan, the intelligence of one who has lost his senses. One cannot obtain any result from demigods without getting sanction from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, a person with a broader outlook can see that the ultimate authority is the Lord, even for material benefits under the circumstances. One with a broader outlook, even for the desire for material enjoyment or for liberation, should take to the worship of the Lord directly. And everyone, whether akama or sakama or mokshakama, should worship the Lord with great expedience. This implies that bhakti yoga may be perfectly administered without any mixture of karma or jnana, as the unmixed sun ray is very forceful and is therefore called tivra. Similarly, unmixed bhakti yoga of hearing, chanting, etc., may be performed by one and all, regardless of inner motive. Kama sarva kama uva moksha kama udardita tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of material desires, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Home, the Personality of God. Om Jnana Chanam Dasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Meditamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swa Patantikam. Guru Maharaj, you're welcome to enlighten us at any time if you so desire. So this is a quite known verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a wonderful shloka describing bhakti yoga unto Krishna is the best way suitable for any person with any background, actually. So Prabhupada, he's highlighting 3 different backgrounds that one may have, or 3 different motives that they may have for coming to serve Krishna. And there's the person akamaha, who has no desires, he's desireless in it, and his heart may be very pure, and he's not aspiring for any type of material enjoyment. He's just aspiring, to serve Krishna. Such people are called akamaha. And second, sarvakama. This person has many, many material desires. His heart is full of so many things. His mind is full of so many wants and longings. But still, it's being described, even though if he has so many desires, if he just surrenders to Krishna and does his best to render steady, enthusiastic devotional service, then everything will be purified. And the third that Prabhupada is mentioning is mokshakama, the person who is desiring of moksha or liberation, or to get free from the entanglements of the material world, to become liberated. So there's 3 categories of people that are being mentioned here. So a magnanimous person who has great intelligence meaning knowing that he actually doesn't know anything and he needs to surrender to God in order to, cultivate real knowledge, and intelligence meaning that this material world is very temporary, so you might as well pursue something eternal. Somebody with real intelligence, whatever category they may belong to, that's being mentioned here above, if he pursues bhakti unto Krishna, he will attain perfection. So this Trivena Bhakti Yogena means performing devotional service with great intensity without any irregularities or inconsistencies. So somebody who is practicing this Tivrena Bhakti Yogena, he's reached a steady platform of serving the Lord with great determination and steadiness in his service. So Bhakti Yoga is the recommended path for anybody, no matter their background. Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajeta Purusham Param. There is no need of any qualification to begin the process of devotional service unto Krishna. How special is that? You know, in order to be a lawyer or a doctor, you need to be trained up. You need to have some schooling. You need to have some background education. You need to have completed high school, completed your first year, second year, third year of college. And then you can finally take the test to become a doctor or lawyer in practice. But this Bhakti Yoga, you actually don't, there's no prerequisite. The only prerequisite is that you're willing to serve God and you're willing to love him and try to develop love for him. So that's very special. So devotional service unto Krishna, as we know and we hear time and time again, it constitutes 9 different processes of devotional service. And if one takes up any of these 9 processes with full heart and soul, he is liable to go back home, back to Godhead in this one lifetime. So these 9 processes of devotional service are hearing, Shravanam, chanting, Kirtanam, remembering, Vishnu Smaranam, serving the Lord's lotus feet, Padasevanam, deity worship, Archanam, praying, Vandanam, executing orders, Dasyam, serving as a friend, Sakyam, complete surrender, Atmanavedium. So who is qualified to follow any of these processes? Well, this verse is stating that there's no preliminary qualification. Anyone can take them up. Be he sincere and willing to accept a spiritual guide in this manner. So even if it's stated that even if one is full of desires or is full of this desire for liberation out of the material stratosphere, if he surrenders unto Krishna, it's Krishna's duty to actually purify his desires so he can come to him very easily, because Krishna, he wants us to come to him way more than we can even imagine. We might want to come to him a lot, but Krishna's desire is to have us join him way more than we want to actually join him. So it's Krishna's responsibility to purify our desires and help us on the path to come to him in the most direct way. And he's just waiting for us to actually surrender and actually take the initiative to, make great spiritual advancement. And once he sees that the sadhaka is willing to do such a thing, Krishna reciprocates. Very much so. So in the Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila Dev, he describes in the 3rd canto that the mind, it's not all bad. It's actually a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So a lot of times, do we ever think like that? A lot of times devotees, they think, oh, the mind, it's so horrible. How do I overcome my mind? Right? It's wandering here and there. But Lord Kapila Dev, he's telling us that in the 3rd canto, that the mind, it's a representative of God. Just because it gets attached to certain things and wanders here and there, that doesn't mean that it's all bad. So it actually has a core to it. It has a nucleus, the mind, and that it has a divine nature within it. So Kapila says that the mind's natural duty is actually to render some kind of service. And if we use this propensity that the mind has to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then all perfection can be attained, all salvation. So then he says, once somebody takes part in such service, the Bhakti Yoga, and taking up this process of Bhakti Yoga, it dissolves all of the material desires and all of the unwanted things in our heart automatically. Just as if when we start eating food, the digestive juices automatically digest the food. Shri Shri Gaura Nitai Ki Jai. So we see as soon as we start partaking in the Lord's remnants and honoring some foodstuffs, the digestive juices and the digestive process, it automatically begins. So our acharyas are describing how as soon as we take up bhakti yoga, the process, it immediately begins a purification without any separate endeavor. If you take some foodstuffs, are you separately endeavoring, oh, I need to digest this foodstuff right now? Are you in knowledge of how the foodstuff is being digested? Are you actively contemplating and thinking about how the digestive juices are moving in the stomach and breaking down all the food? No. So similarly, our acharyas provide, namely Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he mentions how as soon as one takes up bhakti yoga, the process, it's automatic. You don't have to make any extra endeavor. You don't have to do anything special. You just have to render loving devotional service without a personal motive to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and automatically your heart becomes purified. And Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he actually answers the questions of what are the qualifications for one to take this up. And what does he say? Just a little bit of attraction to this bhakti yoga process is the person's qualification. A little bit of interest in bhakti yoga, and one is able to take this up. And also he says a little inclination to hear. These are the qualifications of somebody to reach perfection. That's all it takes is a little interest in this. So this is the transformative power of bhakti yoga. It's really amazing. We see it affecting so many devotees' lives in a positive way, so many people. And, the other day I was chanting some japa, and this man, he came up. He was a very well put together, man. He drove up and he said, me and my brother, we live in this neighborhood, or me and my cousin, I think it was. My name's Quincy, he said, and my cousin's name is Jaleel. And when we were 8 years old, I'm 34 now, we met some devotees while we were playing basketball at the nearby park. And they gave us a book, and we read it, and we were reading it together in secret because our parents, they were in parts of the church. So we were 8 years old reading these books in secret, and all of a sudden, the devotee, he invited us to the Sunday feast, and we asked my mom if we could go, and she said, "Boy, you shouldn't even be leaving the block." That's what he told me. So he said him and his cousin, they were determined to come and attend the Sunday feast. So they waited about a month, and they snuck away one Sunday evening. 8 years old, two boys, and they came and they took prasadam with the devotees, and they sat down. He said, I sat Indian style with you guys. And I took prasadam and I talked to devotees, and they told me, what you guys believe. And he said, I just wanted to thank you for what you're doing. This was one of the most impactful moments actually of my childhood. And it really moved my heart in such a way. It was very special. And I can tell what you guys have there at that church is very special. And I invited him again to this feast, almost 30 years later. I said, please come. 28 years later, 26 years later. So that must have been in the very early days of RVC that he came. So we see he just had a little taste. He honored the prasadam. He read a book. He chanted and danced in the temple room, and that stuck with him his whole life. So this is a very powerful process of bhakti yoga. It's very transformative. That could have dictated so many decisions he made subtly. Just hearing the philosophy at such a young age and being able to see so many happy people in one place, chanting and glorifying the Lord and honoring nice foodstuffs together in a loving atmosphere. That's not everybody gets to see that. So we see how it's very transformative. And There's an example I would like to share given about one of our acharyas in relation to this. So there was, Prabhupada uses this phrase sometimes. Once upon a time, there was this Muslim magistrate. He was a minister of society, and he was not liked by the community. He was very harsh on everybody, and he was trying to convert everybody by force into the Muslim religion. And he would give harsh penalties, like that. And he was hearing around town that there's this person named Rasikananda he's actually converting many people into saints from a very sinful life. And this Muslim magistrate, being a real drag of a person, he was doubting him, and like that, he was kind of angry with him. And so he invited him to come to his court. And he said, "Sir, I've been hearing that you're a very saintly person, but actually I don't believe you. And the only way that you're going to convince me is there's this elephant, and he's going about one of the local towns, and he's creating a great disturbance. He's a mad elephant. He's entering into the town, and he's stampeding. He's destroying all of the gardens, and he's destroying houses, and he's even killing people, this elephant. So the only way that you're going to convince me that you're a great saintly person is if you go and you convert this elephant into a Vaishnava, a humble devotee of Lord Krishna." And so Rasikananda took up the great task of converting this elephant into a Vaishnava. So he was determined to convert the elephant, and he set out to this town, and on his way to the town, he saw the mad elephant stomping on by. And immediately upon seeing Rasikananda, the elephant started charging at him. And the elephant starts charging him, and all of a sudden, when he got within a close proximity of Rasikananda, he stopped. And he was moved by the atmosphere around Rasikananda Prabhu. And Rasikananda looked at him in the eyes. And the elephant stopped and looked at his eyes. And it said that the elephant was able to understand him. And Rasikananda told him, "Mr. Elephant, you're wasting your life. Why are you wasting your life doing so many things? You should be worshiping the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. You should give everything to Lord Krishna." So in that way, the elephant kind of stopped in his tracks, and he started thinking about it. And Rasikananda continued, and he said, "And you should remain humble. After you come to the worship of Lord Sri Krishna, you should not become puffed up because you're one of the only elephants who are worshiping Lord Sri Krishna. You should remain in a humble position and continue to render service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead in all circumstances." So the elephant, he had a change of heart, and he actually became a great devotee. And Rasikananda Prabhu, he actually initiated this elephant, this maddened elephant, into the chanting of the Maha Mantra, and he spoke it to him in his right ear, as the spiritual master does when he initiates a disciple. And he actually named this elephant. He gave him a name, Gopal Das. So this elephant, he became a devotee of Lord Krishna, and he had a change of heart. He was transformed by this bhakti yoga process. So we see sometimes we're even out chanting. We might be chanting our japa, or we might be on a Harinam party. It may not happen so much in the city, but if you get some time to go for a walk or something, so many times I've been chanting japa, and squirrels will come up in very close proximity, or dogs will come up, and they're not barking at all. They're just kind of looking, and they're showing some interest. They're hearing the holy name, and they're showing a small amount of interest. And this is what Rupa Goswami is saying is the only qualification to reach perfection and make progress on this path of bhakti yoga. just a little interest. So even animals can understand it. Even insects can understand it. Even the mad elephant that Rasikananda, liberated from the material world and, led onto the topmost spiritual path was able to understand this. So what is to say about us? We can take this up wholeheartedly. We have intelligence. The elephant, he has some intelligence too, but it's very, very limited. The deer, the squirrel, they have very limited intelligence. But what's to say about somebody in the human birth? So it's mentioned that after Rasikananda initiated the elephant, the magistrate, his name was Ahmed Bek, this rascal Muslim magistrate, he basically invited Rasikananda again into the courtroom to his palace, and he apologized to him. And he said, "You're actually a great saintly person, and I was under illusion, and I was in Maya. Please forgive me, dear sir. I can't even imagine, the level of spiritual advancement you're on to be able to liberate a mad elephant." So, this is our job. Our job is to distribute Srila Prabhupada's literature so we can liberate all the mad elephants of the material world who are causing a ruckus in society and going here and there, destroying so many different things. The materialists, they behave in this way. They're mad after sense gratification, just as, the mad elephant was after destroying the town and the village and, ruining the gardens and killing people. This is how the materialists are mad after sense gratification. So if we are armed with yoga, with the topmost knowledge, armed with Srila Prabhupada's books and the holy name, Prabhupada gave us a duty to make disciples all over the world and liberate so many different people from the clutches of the material existence and come to the spiritual platform of living and doing everything for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it all just starts with a taste. That's all. It's not that we have to make some separate endeavor, or it's not that we ever have to think, oh, this devotee, he's coming from this background, therefore, he's become this qualified. Or we don't have to think this Shastra, it's I need to make a separate endeavor to try to understand it. I need to sit down and study it, like really, really intensively. That's not how the process works. Sure, we study out of love as a service to God, and because we know that understanding more about Krishna pleases Krishna, and it gives us deeper chanting. That's a big part. Chanting, it's not just dry, just listen to the holy name. No. Prabhupada says once you make advancement, naturally pastimes, they come in your mind of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chanting, it's not about just dryly, repeating his names. It can be difficult to get a taste in this way. Without any philosophy. It's actually just sentiment if you have no philosophy to back it. Whereas if you have knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and you have an appreciation for his form, his pastimes, his qualities, and everything pertaining to him, naturally when you're chanting, Krishna will be enlightening you of more intimate things about Krishna and developing your real relationship about Krishna. And this just comes in time. So this is how we actually get a real taste for chanting. When we're chanting, if we can know, if we're just right away looking at our beads all the time, how many more rounds do I have? Let me try to rush through this. Oh, I'm on my 16th round. I've finished. I put my bag down and I'm done for the day. We know that we usually don't have much of a taste for chanting. We can measure our level of chanting and how sincere it was in that day as if we never want to stop chanting. And this should be a state that we can sustain after years of practice indefinitely, where the mantra is playing consistently, and that means our meditation, it's never stopping on the Lord, meditating on his qualities, his form, his pastime, his names. All of them are transcendental, and all of them award equal amounts of spiritual satisfaction for the spiritual aspirant. So automatically the knowledge is rewarded. Automatically, if one follows the process, he will attain a taste, and his heart will become purified, and he'll become steady, and he'll start to develop deep attraction and seriousness in his practice, and he'll start to develop real longing to want to do more service. He'll start developing real attachment to the services that he has already given. And in this way, his services, they will start to become of more and more quality out of love, because he wants to do them perfectly to please the spiritual master and to please Krishna. And then after that stage, he will start to develop some bhava, some preliminary love for God, which manifests itself into prema, which is the topmost goal of, why we're here. We want to develop pure love for God, at all hours of the day, all the time, constant loving meditation on the Lord. So in order to achieve this, who's qualified to achieve such a thing? Well, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was doing, he was giving it out to everyone. He's giving it out to rogues and rascals. He was giving it out to the most fallen debauchees of his time. He was giving it out to great priestly men. He was giving it out to demigod worshippers, giving it out to animals. He liberated all the animals in the Jharkhand forest. They were chanting and dancing in ecstasy with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He made no discrimination. Because, as this verse states, whether he is full of material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, they all must worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. They're all qualified, no matter their background. So thank you very much for kindly hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Are there any comments or questions on today's topic? Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.